Happy Google Pixel Fold delivery day. In this video, I want to go over a recent story here from Android Headlines where they talked about DXOMARK and how they graded the Pixel Fold. There's been a lot of speculation about whether or not this device will be able to hold its own against the Galaxy Z Fold 4. Well, DXOMARK does a pretty good job of being as close to scientific as I think that you can be in rating different aspects about phones. And we have the scores for the Pixel Fold, and we're going to go over them here. And spoiler alert, they look very, very good. So the first aspect that we're looking at here is with the display. How did the Pixel Fold's display hand up to DXOMARK's testing? Well, it did quite well. In fact, if you look at their ranking, it's number one in the global ranking among all phones. Now, it's tied with the Honor Magic 5 with 151 points, but you can see here where it ranked in. It is a fantastic display. And let's compare this very quickly to the score, just the number, for the Z Fold 4, which ended up at number 33 with 133 points. So again, the Pixel Fold trounced it quite handily in that regard. And one of the biggest things about it is that it is the brightest display they've tested on a foldable device, which is fantastic. The pros: good color rendering in most lighting environments, well-managed and pleasant HDR10 experience, well-managed brightness in most tested conditions. Now, they do say that sometimes it does lack a bit of brightness when you're outdoors for long periods of time because it can hit that peak nit, that brightness level, its peak, but it can't sustain that. That's true of all phones. They have a peak that they can't hit for long periods of time, but you're pulling it out of your pocket, using it for a couple minutes and putting it back. It's going to apparently be fairly bright. Lacks smoothness at times when browsing the web. Now, it's hard to say if that's a display issue or a software issue, but those are the two cons that they gave it. Overall, they said it put in a superlative performance in their display testing, earning a joint top position in DxOMark display rankings. And you can see that they break it down into categories, right? So readability, it got a 158. The iPhone 14 Pro Max got a 160. I presume that is their highest scoring device in that category. And you can actually see here how they go about creating that score. And you've got your sort of examples down here of what they're looking at and what they're looking for in these demonstrations. But as you can see, they're ranking everything from the luminance uniformity, so how uniform is the brightness of the screen, color reproduction, which you can see here scored very, very well. One place that it maybe didn't do as well is with motion. Still not a bad score, but not nearly as good as the top-end device. Touch was similarly not quite towards the top, but still very, very good. But again, at the end of the day, when you total it all up, the screen is absolutely fantastic, apparently. Now, if we jump back to this little breakdown again, we have the score for the camera. Now, the cameras scored 133 points, which put it 28th in the global rankings. So let's look at that, and we'll kind of see what that puts around it in terms of context. So with the same score, the iPhone 14, 14 Plus, Pixel 7a, S23 Plus, it's going to be right in that range according to DxOMark for the camera performance. But again, let's talk about that Fold 4. Where does it fall in line? Let's scroll down because it's a little ways down here. And here we are, number 55. So their score for camera was 124, ranking at number 55, whereas the Pixel Fold score, ranking at number 28, was 133. So again, according to DxOMark, Pixel Fold's coming out on top here. You can see here just their overall breakdown. Obviously, photography is the strong point. Bokeh is not that great. That's one of the weaker points. Preview, zoom is pretty solid, and video is also fairly solid. Let's look at their pros and cons. Good exposure, good dynamic range, neutral white balance, something that Pixels just do. Samsung does tend to lean a bit warmer and a bit more saturated, if memory, definitely more saturated. I think it's also slightly warmer a lot of the times. Effective video stabilization, fast and accurate autofocus, and zero shutter lag ensure quick captures. Great to see that. The cons, though: video exposure and white balance are apparently slightly unstable. Fairly high subjective noise levels in backlit and low light. So in lower lighting scenarios, you are getting some noise creeping in. It's interesting to see here if night mode does aid with that a bit. Loss of detail in low light as well. So night mode may be not the best it could be. Depth estimation errors and unpleasant blur gradient in bokeh mode. So the portrait mode is what they're referring to there. So some issues there. Unwanted image artifacts, including ghosting, fusion artifacts, and a judder effect. So there are some cons. You can kind of see here the use cases and conditions. Outdoors, pretty good. Low light is a place that's struggling, friends and family, and then indoor all looking relatively decent. Of course, I'm going to do my own photo test in comparison to the Z Fold 4. I'll link all this in the description so you can go through and look at all of their testing yourself. We're not going to go over all of this in a super deep dive because it would just honestly take way too long. Let's go back though, the audio performance. So they have tests as well for the speakers, and they have it at number 38th in the global ranking. Let's do the same thing. Let's jump in here and see how that compares to the Fold 4. Here's the Pixel Fold, which is tied with things like the Lenovo Legion, the S23, the S22 Ultra, and the Fold 4 here is at 134. So it's got one more point. So you could honestly say audio between the Pixel Fold and the Fold 4 are going to be extraordinarily close, with the Z Fold coming out on top by a hair's breadth. And this does also include your pros and cons for recording. So you can see what's on screen here. Good dynamics and performance. Tonal balance, spatial performance is good. There is some compression, some lack of low-end extension with the recording. Resilience to the wind, not prone to occlusion of finger noises. That's something that my Fold 4 is so bad about, the way I hold it. My pinky covers the microphone all the time. Hopefully that's not a problem with the Pixel Fold. Slightly underwhelming audio zoom, side rejection barely noticeable. So you can see these pros and cons on this screen here. Very, very similar overall to the Galaxy Z Fold, but the screen apparently is very, very good, and the camera is apparently also better than on the Z Fold. These are both good indicators to me for the Google Pixel Fold, again, coming from DXOMARK, and I will link to the Android headlines article in the description, and you can pull out those links from that article yourself at that point. Let me know what you think about this. Are those scores encouraging to you? Are they the best? Well, the display apparently is, but the rest of this stuff, it's, they're in a decent place, and for foldables, they seem to be in a pretty solid place there as well. But again, I want to know what you think about this in the comments down below. Definitely subscribe for more Pixel Fold coverage. Mine should be delivered later today, so tons of coverage coming shortly thereafter, guys. I'll see you on the next one, and until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.